Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today we're going to be going over Tinto Talks number 19, but we have bigger and more important news than whatever this is talking about. Institutions, who cares about that? We do have the full Happy Wednesday at the intro to this, the Tinto Talks. We have hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tinto Talks. And what is the Tinto Talks, you might ask? It's the Happy Wednesday. And also, we discussed the most secret game with the codename Project Caesar, aka Project Teaser, aka Europa Universalis 5, but hush hush, we can't call it that yet because the game's not yet announced, like the loud car announces its presence. This week, we'll talk about the ages and institutions. Very excited about this one. This stuff seems super cool. And also, there's a redacted feature that I'm actually really interested in what it might be because it's going to be every age introduces several new redacted, but we know that it's not a society thing because the society thing's already included. And we know that it's not a law because laws have already been talked about. So what could this redacted be? We'll get to this in just a second, but we have talked about laws and we've talked about societal values, and if it's not one of those things, I'm very curious what it is. But let's continue. This week we'll talk about ages and institutions, concepts that were first introduced in a patch to Europa Universalis 4, aka the prequel to this game that we're not calling Europa Universalis 5 yet. They were a convenient mechanic to make different eras feel different, but soon became too gamified with the development ruining the institution game. Or sorry, with development, not the development. Freudian slip there. Every age introduces several new redacted, and this is what I'm curious as to what it might be. Add several possible new government reforms, and so this is a different thing, so it's something other than government reforms. It's not part of the laws that you can pick from, impacts the price stability of goods, and has some direct impacts on every country. In every age, the amount of gold you pay for your raised levies will increase, okay? The size of the army you are expected to have increases, okay? Each age is in the global world, but its true impact is gradual. There's no special mana you gain through achieving goals that you use to stack modifiers with. And this has been something that they've been kind of careful to avoid. They don't want it to feel like a board game. They want to have emergent behavior, this type of thing. But it's really hard to make things happen in a game without giving the potential for modifier stacking. But we see here all the ages, which we are going to go through in a little bit more granular detail, and each of these ages has three institutions. So the Age of Traditions here has the institution of feudalism, legalism, meritocracy. And we're going to end up going through all of these, but we have 6 ages, roughly one for each century, as we will see. Each age also has 3 institutions that will spawn. Each will unlock redacted and spread across the world. And so is this the same redacted as this redacted? Who knows? Not us. Although... yeah. We have designed several of the institution spawns to be more rigid for the first ages and more flexible in the later ages to guide the game in a certain direction. For those of you who dislike the dynamic of spawning institutions, you can put it in a historic mode, and it will spawn the same location every time. Really do like giving the player the option for this type of thing, like that they have this for the bubonic plague. I think that this will be nice for giving players an opportunity to have some level of decision-making, whether or not they want a more railroaded sort of experience or a sandbox type of experience. And this is like a type of thing that comes up all the time, is there's generally players who want the game to feel like very historic and railroady, and there's also players who absolutely hate railroading. And so giving options like in this way, I think is a really good look from a development perspective, rather than the developer being like, you know what, I think it should be railroaded, or you know what, it should be completely open sandboxy. Instead, giving the players some agency in deciding what type of experience they want, I think is really, really nice. And so really happy about this from like a development perspective. It seems very cognizant of the fact that different types of players will play the game for different reasons, and that this is going to, inform like what types of settings they might want to do. Only 2 options for the rule at this moment. Okay, fair enough. There's no like chaos option where it spawns like specifically outside of wherever it normally spawned, but that would be an interesting one if it was like inverted or something like this, or if like all the eastern institutions spawned in the west and the western ones in the east, something. If you wanted, I'm sure it'll be moddable. That'd be an interesting one, but okay. The spread takes time, and it can only spread through adjacent locations or across a single sea lane, unless you have trade routes from the market center that has embraced it. So we will see the trade-informing institution spread is going to be interesting, and perhaps you will make trade routes accordingly for just trying to get institutions into your nation. The speed of spreads is also impacted by the literacy of the population. Very cool. We have emergent types of mechanics. If you've embraced the institution, then it will spread in proportion to your control in your owned locations. Also cool, where we are seeing this emphasis on control. Really exciting. I hope control very significantly limits the players in the early game to making it the case that they can't really blob out super hard, and this is going to be one way in which it can do that, because if you get the institution centrally but you have this massive empire, you won't get the benefits from the institutions for a while. When an institution is spread more than 10% of the population in your country, you can embrace it, meaning you will get access to the redacted. It will give you give access to the redacted, give us access to the redacted. Okay. As the technology system in Project Caesar is different than the one in EU4, missing an institution for a while is not a complete disaster, but more on that next week. Interesting. Next week, are they going to reveal redacted? I really want to know what redacted is, because it's not laws and it's not societal values, because they've talked about both already, so why would those be redacted? Alright, in later ages, you could also start assigning members of your cabinet to promote institutions in a province, which will then progress any institution you are aware of in the locations of that province. Promoting is heavily based on burghers and the literacy of the location. So, we will see that, it might be the case, or tying stuff to the estates where burghers are, for example, pushing something, I think is going to be nice from the perspective of, balancing crown power, which seems to give you more agency as a player, right? With something like burgher power, where they are going to give you more of these types of benefits in exchange for you losing control. And so anytime there's a tension between two sorts of trade-offs, and those can inform decisions in a game, this is usually leads to the game being more interesting. And so we're seeing that also play out in institutions, in addition to all the other stuff we've already seen. There are 6 ages in the game, and in 1337 we start in the Age of Traditions, and from each age thereon lasts about a century. I'm not sure the math perfectly maths there. Or you start out with one institution, but then there would be 0 years for the final institution, so maybe it's like each one's roughly 80 years. Or something, or I can't do math. Probably I can't do math. Okay, let's continue. It was definitely the best of times. That's true. That was before it was the worst of times. That was the tale of one city. Yeah. Okay, now we have, we're going to have a rundown. And most of what is given to us, these seem to follow the kind of formulaic thing of where we get something in terms of game substance in the first little snippet of one sentence for all of these, and then we get kind of just a flavorish thing. We're still going to read through all of it, but just keep in mind this is mainly going to be flavor. Different societies have established throughout the world for hundreds of thousands of years. Hundreds and thousands, not hundreds of thousands. Whoops, I read that wrong. Hundreds of thousands would be... That's not our timeline. And their foundations can be framed in traditions such as legalism, meritocracy, or feudalism. We gave this institution the spawn point of Rome, even there are plenty of places we could compare it to. Most of the old world has this institution embraced at the start of the game. I think you could reasonably give it to... Well, so the Western perspective of, like, the first instance of where you could put legalism, or where people would, like, want to put it, was it Hammurabi's tablets, I think? The first, legal, or the first written legal thing that we have access to in the West. If I recall, that was Hammurabi's code, or legal things, which, like, not the best laws, but, an eye for an eye. That type of thing. The theories behind legalism have been integrating into Chinese societal structures for hundreds of years. The concept of pure idealism and domestic stability leads to a rich, prosperous state, and a powerful army is deeply rooted in the forms of thought of the Eastern Asian domains. However, as merchants and migrants brought forth the exchange of ideas, the concept of legalism made its way across the vast expanses of the Muslim world. There it adopted the stance of a symbiotic relationship between heathens and Islamic states. Legalism in Europe signified a right of passage from the dying grasp of the great Roman Empire to its remnant legal roots, many of which serve as the basis for new jurisprudence across the old continent. Is this... I mean, okay. I would have thought we would start with legalism with Hammurabi, but this seems fine too. And not trying... It's... Yeah. Having a legal system, a system of rules, codified rules, is going to be a thing, but here they're talking about prosperity and this type of stuff definitely seem more Eastern-oriented, with, China making its way to the West from there. But okay, I think that's more in line with meritocracy. And here we have it. This has its birthplace in Beijing at the start of the game. It is only spread through East Asia, which makes sense. Many individuals of great prestige and positions of power often chose to appoint to them the closest influential spots. Appoint those closest to them to the closest influential spots. The advent of meritocracy as an institution and as a thought movement was largely popular in the courts of imperial China with Confucius and stuff. Confucius himself supported the notion of that those who govern should do so on the basis of merit, not of inherited status. This led to the replacement of Chinese nobility of blood ties to one solely based on meritocratic abilities. This institution's development would ripple across the world and borders and beyond the borders of Asia, and would eventually reach the royal court of even European monarchs whose nobles had a firm grasp on the mechanisms of power and authority. And so we will see some of that in game. Again, we don't know what redacted this is giving us access to, right? But we do know that it will give us access to a redacted. We just know not what, because it's redacted. Feudalism. This has its birthplace in Aachen. Hopefully I pronounced that right. The capital of the Roman Empire under Charlemagne. It is spread into most of the old world as well. Over time, most societies developed the need for a common structure with a stronger and more permanent institutions of government. After the fall of the Roman Empire, this need came to be filled by a number of institutions and customs that were taken together and are often considered to be part of the European feudal system. For similar reasons, permanent governance and societal systems have evolved all over the world, some of which roots go back further than feudalism itself. So we will have feudalism and its, of course, associated redacted. Have we shown this image before? Have you? I think you have. Yeah. Have we shown the... What a tease. Project Teaser at its finest. Okay. And next we have the Age of the Renaissance. A new era of knowledge, arts, and progress is emerging due to growing interactions and institutions in the medieval societies affected by Pax Mongolica, the Islamic Golden Age, and the European Renaissance. So we have the Renaissance institution, and we have our first institution that is going to be spawning, and this is kind of what they talk about in most of the first sentences. The institution will spawn soon after the age starts in a northern Italian city with the university. So it is kind of more railroaded as the earlier ones are. The historical location is Florence. Starting now in the 14th century, the wealthy and powerful Italian city-states have been patronizing artists and scholars willing to explore the old Roman and Greek societies of their forefathers. As a cultural movement, the Renaissance already encompasses most of the region and has had a profound impact on literature, art, philosophy, and music. Humanist scholars are also analyzing the society in which they live, comparing it to the ideals of classical philosophers. Man, I don't know, that word shouldn't be hard for me. Renaissance humanism has grown into a more mature movement, ready to permeate all aspects of society. A new ideal for rulers as well as those who are ruled is spreading quickly as the early printers can distribute copies of these ideas. A true Renaissance humanist is an expert on everything from politics to philosophy, politics and philosophy, to art, textual analysis, music, and architecture. We have Da Vinci, the Renaissance, man. The Renaissance is now ready to reshape the world to better fit its classical ideals. I wonder if... Okay, let's just continue. But we have the next one, banking. This can spawn in any town or city with more than 1,000 burghers in Europe, North Africa, or the Middle East. And so a little bit less railroaded, where the owner has a strong capital economy society of value. And so this is the thing. We will see repeated kind of references to societal values, which I think is a super cool mechanic I'm super excited about. But this isn't the redacted if they could talk about it. Unless it's a double redacted where they are giving us false redacteds, where they are sending us, societal values, but they're saying it's redacted when it's not really redacted, which is what's known as balancing your range. See, if you only talk about redacted things when you reference redacted, then the people really know they're redacted, but if you talk about unredacted things when referencing redacted, then they won't know if you're referencing something that's truly redacted or not really redacted, and in this way you can better deceive the people who are reading. Let's continue. Money lending has existed since metal-based coins appeared in antiquity. However, it depended on some individuals and their family groupings or on the ancient states. A shift occurred in the Middle Ages, encouraged by the renewed growth of long-range commercial activities. Specifically, you would deposit your money on one end of the road, right? And then you would travel without your money, and then on the other end of the road, you would have a voucher that would say how much money you had deposited, or this was the initial banking system, specifically as I understand it historically, and the entire purpose was protection. But then this system evolved, and eventually you have collecting of interest and this type of stuff, rather than a fee for essentially being able to travel while having wealth without actually needing to risk the wealth on the road. On the Eurasian continent and its peripheries, specialized moneylenders began to organize when the Jewish communities started operating between the Christian and Islamic worlds. However, the boom of credit demand that followed the Crusades in the 12th century encouraged merchants in the Italian city-states to create larger structures for money lending, effectively founding the first banking institutions, such as the Peruzzi and Bardi houses. So this is more about the collection of interest than it was kind of the initial very first banks, which I think were on the road to the Holy Land, a way of protecting against banditry more than anything else. More instruments were developed, like bills of exchange and debt bonds, and banking dynasties such as the Medici, Fugger, or Welser soon became as powerful as states. And then we have professional armies. This can spawn in any location in Europe, which has some manpower produced, where the owner has quality societal values. The historic location is in Paris. Armies have existed since war was invented. That's true, many thousands of years ago. However, the form has changed over the centuries, and different types of recruitment and organization have developed in different cultures and periods. In the late Middle Ages, armies had in a wide range of societal values relied on levies based on the structures of that feudal society, with knights and footmen forming a core that was levied seasonally. In some regions, however, states were powerful enough to finance standing armies with professional soldiers who would be available for duty throughout the year. This system was also developed in Europe after the outbreak of the 100 Years' War, being one of the main changes that promoted a military revolution in the early modern age, increasing the size and quality of professional armies while finding new sources of revenue to finance them soon became one of the main challenges for rulers across the world. And, okay, let's continue on. It looks like a nice place to add to the Spanish Empire. No one expects the Spanish colonization. We have the Age of Discovery. At the dawn of the early modern era, new continents are being mapped, and while feudal society is slowly giving way to centralized states. And so we expect to have a lot more modifiers for getting control, which will allow us to blob out more, right? For an enterprising state, this age can be seen as the foundation of a worldwide empire. We have the New World as an institution. This will spawn in any port in Western Europe or North Africa with more than 2,000 burghers, and where the owner has discovered the Azores and the Western African coastline. The historical location is Sevilla. Very kind of cool to see that this is going to... Okay, so it's railroaded, potentially, or it's railroaded to some degree, but I do like that it also adds North Africa in here, because then we could live out our, dreams of a new Carthage, although I'm assuming it's probably going to be pretty hard to do that. The discovery of the New World has heralded a new era, not only for the colonizers and the colonized, really for the colonized, but also led to the spread of materials and techniques, as well as a realization of the vastness of the globe. As animals, crop types, silver, and diseases spread across the Atlantic. Why doesn't he just say silver instead of silver and gold? Okay, I mean, that's... Okay. The first steps have been taken towards a truly global economy. With foreign lands and people being mapped and documented, ideas as well as religious and philosophical debate are increasingly being colored by what we have found overseas. Great minds feel the need to question what was once truth, from Valadoid to Fatapur Sikri. The nature of the world is now up to debate. Apologies for the pronunciation there. And now we have the printing press. The printing press, I've actually read a little bit about the printing press and the importance of the printing press, and we're going to go off on a very brief tangent here. But first, this can spawn in any location with more than 2,000 burgers, where the owner produces more than 5 paper and has the outward societal value. The historical location is Mainz. Interestingly, I've read this book on mathematics that makes the argument that the West, largely speaking, did not operate with algebraic mathematics very much at all, which is using more algebraic formulas and kind of equations and ways of manipulating math. And instead, they largely used geometric sorts of math, which was more reliant on being able to draw, using circles to calculate and this sort of thing. And what was interesting in particular, this is very, very effective for calculating, the location of celestial bodies, the geometric math, but less so for something like physics, is my understanding. Although my understanding of how you calculate stuff with geometric math is not particularly robust. However, the creation of the printing press made it so you now had to convert all the mathematic texts that were previously done through largely drawings, showing geometric shapes and circles and all this type of stuff. You can't bring that into a printing press because you could only use characters. And so this heralded kind of a shift in mathematics, which I've seen been argued that was later needed for kind of the Enlightenment era to follow, the shift of the mathematics to allow for the discovery of various things in physics, because you needed algebraic notation. And the reason that algebraic notation proliferated is because you could put it in algebraic notation in a text with a printing press, but you couldn't do geometric sorts of calculations because those involved drawings rather than text. And so this changed fundamentally the way that mathematics was performed over the course of a couple generations for upcoming intellectuals, which allowed for the development of, some of the ideas that were to follow in the Enlightenment. But anyways, tangent aside, the ability to produce and the written word would revolutionize the spread of information in many ways in the early modern society as a whole. Pioneered by Renaissance men such as Venetian printer Aldus Manatias, the new art helped to fuel the Renaissance by making the translated classics more widely available. Later, the Reformation benefited greatly from the ability to spread critical publications and translations of the Holy Scriptures. Now the printing has matured as a technique and spread through Europe. Hundreds of thousands of copies of everything from religious to political pamphlets to scientific treatises, including the use of algebraic notation, way more, and instructions on how to behave, we do need those, are circulating the continent. With print shops growing ever more commonplace, rulers have found it hard to contain new technique as the comparatively easy means of production means that censorship can be sidestepped by moving a business across a border or even changing the name on the title page. Okay, very cool. And next we have the Pike and Shot. This spawns in a location where some manpower is produced, check. Where the owner has professional armies, okay, and more than 20 army tradition and a land societal values, and have gunpowder technology. The historical location for this is Innsbruck, but the land society values is a bit interesting. So if you're a seafaring nation, we're going to assume that you will not get Pike and Shot, right? And so we see kind of, to be honest, I'm thinking that like outward is probably going to be better, but maybe it's not. And a lot of the requirements for spawning these institutions like capital economy, I'm just assuming are just going to be better. But this is kind of the first one where I don't think it's necessarily going to be the case that being land oriented is going to be better. But okay, a new type of warfare began to develop at the end of the 15th century in the midst of the Italian Wars. The generalization of pikemen in the later Middle Ages as an alternative to men-at-arms who could successfully face heavy cavalry charges was accompanied by the development of portable firearms, mainly the matchlock arquebuses and muskets. The soldiers that now adopt a new formation in which the pikemen form a square, while the arquebusiers fan out to the sides and front and seek cover behind or inside the square in case the formation enters close combat. This new type of formation, called a Pike and Shot, was favored by the German Landsknechts and Spanish tercios, apologies for pronunciations, and was soon adopted by other armies, reigning supreme on European battlefields for nearly 2 centuries, until superseded in the early 18th century by line infantry formations with new flintlock muskets and mounting bayonets. Okay, the heretic is trying to defend his heresy. Terrible. Cast him out. Next up, we have the Age of Reformation. From east to west, north to south, is the age of religious convocation, debates, and mass movements. In Europe, the Protestant churches are entrenched, while millennialism takes hold of Iran, and religious syncretism shapes Indian society. Sorry for pronunciations there. We have confessionalism. This spawns in a town or city in Europe which has the printing press, where the owner is Catholic, and the dominant religion is Catholic, and has the spiritualist societal value. And I'm guessing that this is going to be a value that is... I'm wondering if it's going to be like antagonistic to empiricism or empirical like societal value, which is a bit interesting. And so we see another institution. I mean, I assume that being spiritualist is, well, okay. I assume it's going to be, you're going to want to be more empirically oriented, but in terms of game balance. But this might not be the case. It's also, what would be really nice is actually if some societal values are good early on, and then get bad later. And so I'd love to see if actually spiritualist was good early on for managing your far-flung society, and then later as technologies develop, maybe being more empirical is better. The historical location is Augsburg. Catholicism has been regarded as a unitary entity for a long time, but the advent of various Protestant faiths has put an end to that. With the rise of a myriad of different interpretations of what faith should be, Christianity is all but united. But where before any deviance from the church could easily be labeled as heretic, now the lines are creating the differences have become blurrier at least. As such, there has been increasing interest for both religious and secular authorities alike to clearly define the shapes of their specific confessions, enforcing their particular rules on views on all aspects of faith and life. This allows them a more firm grip on their faith and their populations, but also increases the differentiation and thus animosity with all the other religions. So it does seem like the firm grip is giving you more control. Kind of expect it. Okay, next up we have global trade, which my playstyle in EU4 was always to go super trade heavy. Haven't really played EU4 in a while, but this is probably what I'm going to be more excited for and going to be trying at least initially. This spawns in a market center in a city anywhere in the world that has among the most value of goods traded. The historical location is Lisbon, and this is the first one we see that you could in theory spawn in the east with global trade. And so this is going to be interesting, and I'm assuming that as we kind of get deeper into the ages, that more stuff is going to have less of a specific location where it's spawning and becomes a little bit more global. Goods have been moved across continents since antiquity, that's true, but where this was previously limited to a set number of routes and goods, such as the manufactured goods of India and China finding their way across the Indian Ocean along the Silk Road, all trade is now increasingly becoming a part of the greater world network. With the discovery of the Americas, sea routes around Africa, and the crossing of the Pacific Ocean, that's a lot of stuff. Local trade networks are being connected into one world-spanning interconnected web. Silver mined in the Andes is now being boxed and taken to Europe all the way to China and India. So this is a bit interesting to me, and probably I'm reading into this too much, but we saw silver kind of invoked before, and now we see silver invoked first. I wonder if he's working on something having to do specifically with silver in terms of flavor, and that's why silver is more on his mind, because we didn't see gold invoked earlier. Okay, but iron mined and brought in Scandinavia is being sold in West Africa by English merchants, and others are making a fortune by just distributing cloth and spices within this Southeast Asian trade sphere. Local Indian merchants are investing into future European trade ventures. It may be still too early to speak of a truly global economy, but surely the first seeds have been sown. Again, we see silver mentioned, but we don't see gold mentioned. I mean, gold was definitely brought back to Spain and just absolutely ruined Spain. They discovered what inflation was the hard way, but, okay. And we see artillery. This rip Constantinople. This will spawn in any city of the world that has a gunsmith and metal workshop and where the owner has offensive societal value. The historical location is Constantinople, not like this. That, of course, brought down Constantinople. The city was basically impossible to take until you got really big guns, and then the walls became less important. The innovation of gunpowder in Song, China led to the development of a new device that would employ its firepower in warfare, the artillery. Although it spread throughout Eurasia in the 13th century, its use as a common weapon system did not happen until the 15th century, as improvements in the cannon length and gunpowder recipe made artillery much more powerful, now posing a threat to stone castles and fortifications, the most common in Europe. Soon artillery would not only be used in sieges, but also on battlefields, as smaller caliber guns now featured the mobility required to quickly deploy if used. We got some wee-woos. Shout out to the guy who hopefully makes it. Its final destination as a key warfare system would come in the 18th century, especially after Napoleon perfected its use at key points during battles. So we do see cannons as an institution, and this will give us a redacted, but a redacted that we know not what, because each one of these are giving us a redacted. Okay. Age of absolutism. As governments wrest the absolute power in their countries from other parties, they are now able to devote themselves to the building of empires. So we are seeing like a lot of similarities in terms of ages to EU4. But okay, this is the age of the state. Rulers and their armies. We have manufactories. This will spawn in any location with more than 100 building levels and at least 20,000 burghers, and where the owner has a capitalist economy, societal value. The historical location is Derby. No requirements pertaining to like geography or continents or east versus west, any of this. While a number of the technical innovations during the course of the 16th and 17th centuries have increased the output of production for some products, such as iron and cloth, to some extent, the biggest improvement in the field of production has come in the form of a new form of organization. By creating manufactories, often outside the city limits, merchant capitalists can both bypass the ancient guild laws that inhibit mass production and pioneer ways to increase production through organization and specialization of labor in one place. Specialization was a really huge one because, like, if a blacksmith does nothing but make screws, even without some sort of weird assembly line or this type of thing, if a blacksmith does nothing but make nails, let's say, he is going to be so much faster at making nails than anyone else. And so as long as you have enough, international trade such that he can sell all of his nails, you get a huge benefit from only making one thing. The forerunners of the later industrialization were able to increase output by facilitating access to raw materials and mass organization of labor rather than by expensive new machinery. This in itself is a huge change over the often regulated methods of old. However, and together with the later technical advances, this new mode of production will come to revolutionize society. I wonder if there will be a drawback in terms of making the burghers pissed. Because of manufacturing, or if the burghers will be the burghers are the merchants, right? More so than the tradespeople, but the tradespeople you'd expect to be pissed. So it would be interesting to see how that if the redacted has any effects there. Next up, we have the scientific revolution. This spawns in a location with a university, a high average literacy, and where the owner has the innovative social value. The historical location is Cambridge. It is clear that the world is smaller now than ever before. The rise of global trade in the printing industry led to an increased flow of people and ideas, allowing for more widespread dissemination of knowledge. This has resulted in a more thorough questioning and analysis of the reality of the world. What was once just accepted as fact is now questioned, and what was once only poorly understood is now observed, and what was once only supposed tested. The recent advancements in areas such as mathematics, physics, or biology are undeniable, but the real revolution is the change in the perception and the approach towards science itself and the way of understanding it. Systematic experimentation is the true scientific revolution and will surely change completely our conception of the world. Change completely? Completely change. Interesting. Okay. And finally, we have we have one more age. We have military revolutions to round out the age of absolutism. This can spawn in any capital with a lot of military buildings that has a population over 50,000. Interesting that most of these have been specific in terms of numbers, but this just says a lot. The historical location is in Stockholm. The continuous state of war affecting Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries led to a sharp increase of the size of armies as the necessity of born out of the growing authority competing absolutist regimes. The infantry is now armed en masse with flintlocks, muskets, greatly increasing their firepower and performance in battle by being deployed in the innovative line formation, replacing the old Pike and Shot. Those needs are also affect the capabilities of the state administration as it continues to expand to handle the manpower and finances required by this increase in the size of the military. That also is spearheading the development of supply chains required to feed and sustain armies through intermediate depots that support the operational armies. Do think that this is a little bit of a hint regarding mechanics in terms of wars. It'll be interesting to see if supply is a huge concern, and that if you stock up depots in particular places, I think that they've said that you could stockpile food, or there are some buildings that stockpile food, and so it'll be cool to see if there is a mini game in terms of infrastructure and supply regarding using like larger armies. But okay, the result of these advances would be none other than the upsurge of wars between increasingly militarized countries in the 18th century. And so, okay, this is more about a military revolution than a revolution, but the age of revolutions is more about a revolution than a military, except it's also about military. It's about violence. All right. The questioning of rights, authority, and the world itself during the Enlightenment has led to the rejection of the ancient regime. As absolutism gives way to revolutions, kingdoms may have to make place for republics. We have the Enlightenment following the, what was it, the Age of Reason or Scientific Revolution. This spawns in a location with a university, high average literacy, where the owner has the innovative societal value. The historical location is Paris. Again, we are seeing it where it is not tied to specifically the West and appears to be able to spawn elsewhere. The last century has seen rationalism and empiricism gaining an ever-increasing popularity amongst the minds of age. In letters, publications, and coffeehouses, kings, scientists, philosophers, and littérateurs are discussing the merits of tolerance, the scientific method, and the spreading of the ideals of the Enlightenment to all of humanity. From universities or courts of enlightened monarchs, expeditions are being sent to measure, catalog, weigh, and map the world so that we can better understand the laws that govern everything around us. Others discuss laws that govern society and try to reach an understanding of the rights of man. Great projects such as the colossal undertaking of creating a complete encyclopedia of all knowledge, or a complete index of all plants, animals, and fungi in the world are being pursued for the greater good of humanity. The light of reason has been lit, and many will not rest until it is brought to all corners of the earth. Oh, brought to all corners of the earth, not like this. Colonization. Alright, we have industrialization next. This will spawn in any location with more than 250 building levels. See, there's the specified number, not a lot. And at least 20,000 burgers, and where the owner has a capital economy societal value. The historical location is Blackburn. I think this is the third institution we've seen that requires the capital economy societal value. And I'm assuming, just generally speaking, spawning an institution yourself is valuable. The dawn of the 18th century gave rise to many new institutions as man's thirst for growth took hold. Advances in the field of production and manufacturing, as well as the introduction of many complicated machinery, will change the world as we know it and on a global scale. The rise of the Industrial Revolution brings about the international and lasting changes, not just in commerce and business, but in the fabric of society itself. Innovations such as the power loom and steam engines, shall push the capabilities of mankind to its highest zenith yet. Yeah, so interestingly, like a lot of stuff that was done with the like both weaving and the creation of like thread itself was what women spent a lot of their time doing. Before in the industrial era, in societies all across the world. There's a interesting book I've read on it, like called The Fabric of Civilization. It's interesting to read, but the freeing up of a lot of that labor by, moving it to this, because you used to just like watch your kids as you make thread and this type of thing. It's interesting to see the effect that it has. Like textiles are just such a big thing, like throughout all of the world, because they're just pretty universal, with the exception of places where they just only use leather. Okay, let's not get into a tangent about fabric. Okay, we have Levy and Maas, where this can spawn in any capital with a lot of military buildings. Again, we just see a lot. And a population of over 200,000, and where the owner has the defensive societal value. The historical location is, again, Paris. I think this is the third institution we've seen located in Paris. Warfare is an ever-evolving concept, that's true. We see drone warfare today. Innovated and honed by generation after generation, the 18th century saw a rise of powerful empires, each with its own ambitions. To satisfy the need for expansion and provide the fuel necessary to fulfill those ambitions, new nationwide conscription laws will be drafted and signed into effect, raising armies of all unmarried young men, the size of which will shape the course of history. So we do see it very nice. Next week we'll talk about what replaced technology and national ideas system for Project Teaser, which of course will be excited. We don't see the full sandwich, so I guess we could object there. Everyone knows that happy salutations belong in sandwich form. Obviously, where you want the happy at the beginning and the end, but we did get the full holiday special of a Happy Wednesday today, which makes this a very Happy Wednesday, with the capitalized Happy Wednesday, the properly capitalized Happy Wednesday. Next, or tomorrow, we will be covering both the Dev Diary as well as the patch notes for Victoria 3. And so we'll be getting into that. But other than that, I wish you a happy Wednesday. And feel free to like, comment, subscribe, etc. Mostly etc. If you etc. in the comments, surely the abyss will gaze back. Yeah. Other than that, happy Wednesday.